So, our session today, the moderator of our session, Alex Hayes, is known to a lot of people. Media agencies, what they really want, the ultimate question. Alex is the editor of Mumbrella, has been for a few years now, and as I said, is known to a lot of us in the room. I'll let him introduce the panel. It is a fantastic panel, it's going to be a great session, so please make him welcome, Alex Hayes.
Good afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining us in here today. I'm going to assume there's a lot of you in here interested in how you're able to make a little bit more money for your stations and possibly yourselves. Quick show of hands from you guys, like a bit of audience participation first off. How many people here are in sales? Okay. And be honest now, how many of you have been frustrated in the past at interacting with media agencies? Be honest. Okay, so it's good to know. Good to set the temperature of the crowd early on. So the idea with today's session basically is for us to unpack a little bit of actually what media agencies are after from you guys, from yourselves in terms of how you present, right down to actually what you're offering, and hopefully along the way get a few tips as to how you might be able to do it a little bit better as well. I'm just going to introduce the panelists first off, and then we'll dive in. So to my immediate left is Peter Pacey, who is Sydney Head of Strategy at Cara. Peter has a varied career working for media companies as a marketer and predominantly at media agencies. Strategy roles at Icon, Bohemia and OMD have been punctuated with roles including marketing manager for Pacific Magazines and acting national advertising manager for Universal Pictures. On top of it all, she's also a civil marriage celebrant, a job she says she does quite literally for the love. So if there's anyone who's met someone special here today, grab her afterwards. You might be able to First National Radio Conference marriage. Far end, we have Rebecca Ho. Rebecca represents the money side of the equation on today's panel, having spent her career so far in trading. Studied at Icon as a communications coordinator. She's worked her way up through the ranks to become trading manager, and moving to Starcom, became an investment manager in 2014, and senior investment manager a year ago, leading a team trying to figure out how best to use client money in the shifting media landscape. And in the middle is Zoe May, who's Associate Director of Intel at Maxis Communications. Now, Zoe's background is also on media planning, although that's not surprising given she got into media after studying psychology at uni and developing a fascination with the motivations behind people's actions. And what better place to mess with people than in media? She started her career at Maxis as a media planner, and after a brief sojourn to returned in 2014 in a strategy role. During her career, she has won an MFA award and been named a Yahoo 7 Digital Star, a thoroughly worthwhile scheme done in conjunction with Mumbrella, for anyone interested. So I'm going to start with a question, maybe, honesty session. And Peter, I'll come to you first. On the whole, how good is radio at selling itself?
I think it's a little hit and miss, if I'm honest. I think some networks and some stations do it really well. They give us a lot of information, they come proactively to us, they really seek a good and deep understanding of our client's business, and that for me is the key. Some radio stations, some networks don't do it as well as others. And I can tell you right now that hardly anyone ever comes to see strategy teams. And that's where a lot of the decisions are made at the very beginning.
Maybe it's interesting, just while we're on that topic, to give everyone an idea of actually what your place in the ecosystem is.
Yeah, so Mark Ritson talked a lot about the funnel. We are right up at the top of the funnel. So we are working out essentially who our consumers are, what business needs our clients have, what are the business problems that we're actually trying to solve, and how we can solve those through communications. So essentially, from a process point of view, we do a huge amount of research and developing insights into who our consumers are, what we're actually trying to communicate, how we're going to communicate, and then kind of a top-line way of where we're actually going to do that. And then we work with our implementation teams to actually bring that to life, which is where the majority of you guys will actually interact, is with the implementation and the investment teams.
Zoe, I'll come to you. Do your clients beating a path to radio's door?
Look, I think our clients know what radio is and what it's good at. I think they don't think beyond traditional though, so I think there's a big opportunity to, demonstrate the changes that have happened in the last sort of year, or even 6 months, and really bring to life the content opportunities, because I see that as a really big opportunity for radio that they're not really aware of, and how that can work.
Okay, and your role is fairly similar to Peter's?
Similar to Peter. So I'm in strategy as well. So working through the brief and all the business problems, and then essentially do the channel recommendations, and then that goes into the implementation team. But I like to sort of stay and hang around in there for a bit to make sure that the implementation happens as per what I've recommended from the beginning. So I like to be pretty involved, which they probably hate.
And Rebecca, you're sort of on the other side of the media agency equation, sort of more in the money team. How much people, presumably you're someone that people are targeting more than the strategy guys?
Look, it's always fun when people come to me first rather than the strategy guys. But look, I think investment isn't as silo as you guys think. We do work really closely from the start of the brief. We do sit in on the client briefs. We're sitting with the strategy team from channel down to implementation. So don't think that investment doesn't know anything from a strategy side, and we only know money and value. So look, kind of that's what I do. And the whole point of doing that is making sure we are answering our clients' business challenges, but also getting that right value for our client. Because a lot of the times when we just leave things down to strategy or planning, you don't really get that end result of how we're actually getting paid from our clients. Is it hitting that KPI we need to make, or is it getting the right value? And if we just leave it till the end, we might not get that. From a radio point of view, look, I think radio is doing a good job. Anyone that's close to SMI data probably knows radio is doing a good job. It's consistent, there's year-on-year growth, revenue is doing well from a radio point of view. But there's room for improvement. It's doing well from a traditional media sense, but I would like to see it being a bit more progressive and how it can work with kind of other progressive mediums. And I guess, you guys do well, radio does well when we brief you guys out for campaign by campaign, but we don't really get proactive opportunities. You guys do well answering briefs, but you guys don't come up proactively enough to answer challenges.
That's interesting. Is that a sentiment?
I don't know if I'd agree with that. I work with Hungry Jack's, that's my main client, and day part's a really big part of that. So radio does really well at targeting specific, breakfast, lunch and dinner. So I talk to my radio guys every week, and they're constantly coming with proactive ideas. Not all of them are brilliant, but a lot of them have sparks length that wasn't originally going to be there before and has turned into a campaign opportunity. So, yeah.
Peter, what would you like to see more of coming from radio?
Yeah, it's interesting sitting through this morning's sessions because, watching Hamish and Andy, all I could think of was, our job in the strategy team is to be creative. It's an overused word, but to be creative, to come up with the big ideas. And their whole conversation about big ideas and trying to force something like that and force fit it into a box is what we face constantly, right? Getting those people at your networks involved in that creative process for us, though, would be huge. Not only from a relationship point of view, and I know I'm overstating it, but, I lead the strategy for Woolworths. If we had our team run a brainstorm and Hamish and or Andy were in that brainstorm, helping us bounce ideas, helping to come up with amazing ways that, we could bring a particular element of Woolworths to life, that would be huge. It'd be huge from the client's point of view, it'd be huge from a morale and motivation point of view, it'd be huge from an idea point of view, and it would definitely get radio more entrenched into whatever that campaign opportunity is. Probably overstating it though, I think they've got better things to do. Right, but there are lots of creative people who work behind the scenes, and I think that potentially we could get them more involved in our creative process as well.
So you're open to more collaboration?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's one of the things at Cara that we try really hard to drive is collaboration with media partners. But it's a really fine line between if we have a particular media brand in that then the campaign goes down that media brand, and that's not necessarily what we want from a client point of view. It's not agnostic. So, and in strategy, we have to be very much media agnostic and platform agnostic. So,
I mean, Zoe, is that appealing to you? Sort of people getting involved in that ideation stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the clients' most favourite pieces of work we've done from a radio perspective, Hamish and Andy basically came up with this idea. I don't know if you guys saw it. They wanted to denug a QSR restaurant, and that was just an idea they wanted to do in the show. They approached Hungry Jack's about it, and they were really excited to get on board. And they didn't put any sort of traditional brand spots or anything around it. It was more, they did a whole week of hype leading up. Where are they going to be? Will be KFC, McDonald's. Where are they going? And then when they turned up to Hungry Jack's, it was they got all the content from them being there and that exposure. So, and that worked amazingly for them. So absolutely, when the talent's involved and on board, because that's the hardest thing to do, because you might come up with this amazing idea and then you brief it to the networks and the talent's like, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. And you're like, well, that's what we've sold in, so touch it. So, yeah.
Let's sort of move almost back a step, I guess, in terms of just people getting time in your diary and actually getting your attention. And maybe it's a good time to share examples of where you've seen really good examples of media companies doing something good or interesting to actually sort of start a conversation with you and maybe someone who's gone a bit overkill. Rebecca, I'll come to you first.
We were just talking about this before. We had so many examples. Look, I think it's not just competitions anymore. I think 5 years ago, if you had a competition with a great getaway prize, everyone would come to you, meet up with you and all that. It's not about that anymore. I think, it could be as easy as just, bring in, is it breakfast? So Aaron, I remember specifically, they had the summer fling and they wanted to promote that. So they brought in, massive, awesome summer breakfast. They had a good presentation. And that's all it takes to, get our attention. As long as it relates to what they're trying to sell. I've been in multiple presentations where they've brought in Merrick and they've brought in, I think, Jules Lunn and another, I think it was Maz from SEA. And it didn't relate to what they were trying to sell. So yes, it got my attention for that 1 minute, but when I went back to the office and I thought about the proposal, it didn't really make sense. I didn't understand why they brought in the talent. There was no use for the talent to be there, but it was fun. The talent was there and they got me coffee, but there was nothing else. There was nothing else besides that. So it doesn't have to be crazy. I'm sending you away to, I don't know, Tasmania for a weekend. It's not about that anymore, I think.
Zoe, come to you on this one.
I forgot what the question was.
So the good and bad, is it grand gesture stuff that's going to get your attention from media companies?
I think it's a balance, and I think it depends on the audience. So, one of the most memorable sort of things that I remember from a media owner is when Move Media launched into the markets. They're kind of like a competitor to APN bus rides in like western suburbs. Anyway, they had one of their buses right around North Sydney, which is where all of Group M and a lot of other agencies are. And it had, it was dressed like a cow because it's Move, and then it had a tail on the back of it. You just saw it all day. And then they followed up by coming in and doing a magic show, which was really, really well done. It was a really good magic show. And so that didn't really link to their offering at all, but I remember who they are all the time because it just made such an impact on me, and they were relevant for my brand, so yeah.
And have they followed that up since?
Yeah. We're doing something with them for summer, so yes.
Okay, Peter.
I think it's really interesting that you talked about grand gestures, because when we think about our consumers, we talk about ideas and we talk about content, it's got to be this big grand gesture. But as Hamish and Andy were talking about earlier, it's the meaningful connection is that $5 note. Right? It's that thing that makes you feel like something really valuable has happened. So the grand gesture of a media agency presentation of, Channel 7 bringing in dancing girls and drummers for the Rio launch was slightly awkward in the middle of the office because there were semi-nude people there. Maybe I'm just really repressed, I don't know, but it's very loud and very naked.
Some people liked it.
Some people liked it. A lot of people liked it.
I thought that was an average day in a media agency.
Pretty much. But for me, it's things like, Smooth ran a fantastic creative competition where people are actually, and we had entries into it, where people are actually doing work, thinking about how we can use the Smooth network to solve a particular business problem. It was a proactive. It makes you think of that brand a lot more. It makes you really invest your time and emotion into that brand. And if you win something because you've come up with the best idea, then you have that emotional connection of, cool, I was recognised, I'm clever. So all those things that we want our consumers to feel about our brands and how we connect with them are just as relevant for us. We're people. So if you guys think of us as your consumers, media agencies as your consumers, you know how to talk, you totally know how to talk to your audiences, right? You guys do it all day long, literally all day long, across so many different markets for so many different audiences. Just think of us as exactly the same. Plus, we like to be bribed.
Obviously, within
food only.
I was going to say, within a strict code of ethics,
yeah,
obviously.
Of course.
Yeah.
Food and coffee.
We've mentioned SEO, we've mentioned Nova, the big players in the radio market. There's a lot of smaller regional players still out there and still trying to vie for dollars. How do they get your attention? How can they get on your schedules? Is there a sort of format, Zoe?
Yeah, definitely. I guess, again, I'm going about Hungry Jack's, but regional is really important for them because almost half their stores, not half the stores, but a little less than half are in regional markets. So definitely radio and regional is really important for us. I guess the trouble is you don't want to talk to 50 different providers, so it's finding that sort of balance between getting scale and getting in the right market. So I know SCA has a regional offering that they kind of do that. So there's a couple, but I think, it's tough because from our perspective and from more implementation guys, I guess, is the more people that you have to deal with, the more work it is. So I guess we're always looking for that large scale solution, which with regional is tricky. So I don't know what the solution is, but definitely, come in and do a magic show and you'll get our attention. No, seriously, yeah.
I get a feeling there's going to be a surge in Google searches after this session for where do I learn magic? Rebecca,
regional radio is quite important for a lot of my clients, actually. So Subaru that I work on, IGA, huge regional presence. Regional radio has always been a quite tricky one. I would say majority of people in media agencies would think that there's only one sole regional station per regional market. A lot of us actually don't know, for example, a Newcastle might have more than one regional station. So it gets to the point where, the implementation guys might just be using the same regional station year after year because they only think there is that one station. And when you move to the smaller regional markets, there might only be that one station. But, what I like to see a bit more from the regional players is come in and talk to us. I don't feel that we see you guys as much as the metro guys, and not because we don't like you guys, we totally love you guys, but start educating us. I know some stations aren't surveyed, but I'm sure there's data and audience for you guys to back up why we should go into regional networks with you guys. The other thing is we'd like to understand a bit more, well, personally, I'd like to understand a bit more from a digital point of view, because obviously from a metro point of view, you see quite a lot of digital and social opportunities that come up in responses, but I don't see much from a regional point of view. I just see a lot of spots and dots and a media schedule. Here it is. You buy 3 spots, you get 2 spots for free. That's not enough these days. It's great for a tactical campaign, but if we're talking about long-term partnerships and creating value for our clients, I really want you to start understanding where you guys sit in the whole of the consumer footprint, I guess, and the experience, rather than us briefing you for a 1-month campaign and you come back with a great campaign for that 1 month. But what about the next 11 months?
Peter, Rebecca raises an interesting point there around sort of knowing who's who in the zoo in regional markets? Is there anywhere you can actually go, or is there a resource that's sort of out there that you can actually use to work that out?
I don't know the answer to that question. These guys might have a better idea.
Yeah.
We, because we're thinking so much more kind of at the top, I have to think about, all right, what's going to be the benefit of using radio in a regional area? So for me, that's going to be, it's about live, it's about hyper-local, it's about making that real connection and fundamentally why people are listening to radio in these areas. You know, when I talk to the gang back at the office about regional versus metro versus everything, the conversation is very much, we love regional radio for so many reasons, because of the personal connection with listeners. Station managers know their audiences so well. They know the nuances of each region so well. But when it comes time to actually buying, it's kind of easier, if we're going to do broadcasting, if we're going to talk about reach, it's kind of easier to buy TV. And that's because it's easier and it's more cost effective. It can be. Now, from a purely strategic point of view, I spit on that, of course, because I want that connection, I want that emotional connection with my consumers. So it's a bit of a balance, but yeah, I don't know where I would look, to be honest.
No, interesting. Just move on from region a little bit to DAB, another medium that maybe isn't talked about as much, sort of in conversations around radio. Obviously, it's had a bit of attention of late with the closure of Classic Rock, one of the more successful stations. And Peter, maybe I'll start with you here. How does that? What message does that send to you? When you're looking at investing money in these things around DAB and its sort of longevity.
Yeah. I think we're in a really interesting time of our industry where everything, we talk so much about fragmentation and everything's kind of scattered to the wind, but actually we're in a phase of consolidation. It's all kind of coming back into the big powerhouses, right? So that makes it even more kind of challenging. I think it's a real shame that a station that strong and that beloved has been shut down because of the cannibalisation with its bigger market brand name. But really, we're looking at the digitisation of everything, and Mark talked a little bit about this morning. How is this affected with streaming? How is this affected with how else I can listen to content? Everything that we do has to have a connection, but then it's got to be scalable. And so if digital radio at the moment isn't really scalable, then that's an issue for us. Strategically, we're going to be able to target people better through programmatic as that kind of gathers speed, but we're still kind of in its infancy, I would say.
Rebecca, I'll come to you on the DAB question.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't really done too much with DAB. Plus, I think recently, only for a small campaign, I personally wouldn't think DAB Plus would fit on a plan because, number one, the audiences are quite small. And number two, they're quite niche focused. So if I wanted to target audiences that listen to rock, I could easily go to a Spotify, Pandora and do that. And they'll be more data-led as well, and I could buy better with them. I don't really hear from them. They don't really appear on any proposals. But like I said, it's not huge. It's not big on my radar.
Zoe, do you have anything on DAB?
I don't think that we get really talked to about it much at all. I remember about a year ago it was kind of a big topic and, watch this space, but I haven't really heard much recently. I've read some stuff recently from, the market, but not from my reps or who I have contact with.
Yeah, anything that I'm reading is like overseas examples about how, like the way that, particular stations, let's say in the UK or specific platforms in the UK are doing things like, you can listen to the one particular DJ, which is why people listen to radio because they have such a connection with the talent. But then you can actually listen to lots of different music playlists. So you could do 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, but you can still listen to that one DJ or have skippable music so that it's kind of really tailored to you. That stuff's really interesting to me, but I don't hear about that happening in this market. So.
Rebecca, just coming back to you just for a second on this one. It's probably quite disheartening for people in this room to hear, I can't see how DAB would fit on the plan. Is that a message basically of don't worry about that, when you're coming to sell to me, because I'm really not going to be interested in it?
No, sell to me. I want to hear more about it. And the reason it doesn't fit on plan because we don't understand it. That's just maybe one sample size of one, but I'm sure other people in agencies might do the same thing, and it seems like that's the trend. Talk to us about it. I'm sure it can fit, and if it provides value and it answers client solutions, it definitely fits on the plan. But at this stage, because we don't know too much about it, it doesn't fit on the plan.
Okay. Now this morning, we obviously saw presented the new data from the research, sort of around share of listening and so on, and obviously that showed that radio still sort of dominates in that. And Peter, I'll start with you here because you were in the session. As someone making decisions around this kind of stuff, does that kind of research actually have an impact on decisions you're making?
Yes, because I think that one of the amazing things about radio and one of its successes and why it will continue to play a really big part on our media plans and within consumers' lives is because of the live element. So that's what radio does so well. The impact of streaming and the impact of being able to access your music on the go, I think we're going to feel more pressure. So I know that it's 6% streaming at the moment and 13% of listening to your own music, but streaming is going to become more because it's coming into cars. And the cultural norm is that we get into our cars, it's been this way for 50 years or however long, you get into your car and you put on some music or some talk or whatever, you put on a companion for your car. Now, what you can access via the different technology in cars is that's what's going to fundamentally shift whatever that cultural norm is. So I can now, if I want to listen to whatever's going on live from my news, my traffic, the weather, whatever, my entertainment news, whatever, I can pop on Nova, I can pop on the ABC, I can pop on whoever. But when I want to learn something, I'm already listening to podcasts. I might be listening to Joe Rogan out of the States, or I might be listening to TEDx, or I might be listening to whatever, or I might be playing something through Spotify. So I just feel like the mix of that is really going to change, and that streaming and podcasts are going to become more prevalent.
Okay, and Joe, I'll come to you on this one. Mark Ritchson talked a lot this morning. It's a similar refrain he's had for a few months now around sort of media buyers and people in media agencies being 27-year-old males who are just interested in a new thing. And, you're obviously very illustrative of this, of that demographic there. But how much does that, how true a reflection of that, of the industry is that, in your opinion?
Okay. I guess it depends where you go. Some agencies probably more so than others, but it's much more diverse than that now, like it is in your companies, right? It's not just everyone in their 20s. There's a broad range of experiences and a broad range of skills. And to say that everyone's 28-year-old males is obviously not true. But yeah, it's diverse, and you need that because it's new skills and old skills that make it all come together.
And how much does your sort of personal media consumption play into the plans that you're making?
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really, because I'm not the consumer really that I'm going after or targeting. If it was, then it would be all outdoor and radio basically. So that's not me. But there's certain things that you look into more because you find something that's cool and you've seen things other advertisers have done in that space that you want to see if it would work for one of your clients. But it's more getting inspiration rather than that's the channel that we need to be on, if that makes sense.
And Rebecca, I'll come to you. Where does is streaming actually taking money from radio budgets, or is it still coming from digital? Where's it coming from for you?
It's a bit of both. Some of my clients would see streaming radio as the radio pot, and some of my clients will see it as the digital pot. But in saying that, look, I think radio networks and any other channel are competitors because, like we said, we want to be targeting consumers on any platform, any device, whatever content it is. So, whether I'm speaking to the TV networks, radio is a competitor, video is a competitor, digital is a competitor. So I wouldn't just think that radio and streaming radio are just the only competitors. But, I've read a few studies on, how can traditional radio and streaming radio actually work together to combat and get the budget from TV and digital. And that's quite interesting, I thought, because I think they do work well. One of my clients target, general total grocery buyers. You've got your traditional Australians who fall in the GBs, which probably listen to traditional radio, but you've also got these progressive millennials that also fall in GB's bucket that listen to streaming radio. So how they work together to get a bigger piece of the budget, I think.
Now, pre-warn you, I'm going to throw out questions for a few minutes in a couple of moments' time. Just sticking with that for a moment, Rebecca, are there lessons that, more traditional radio salespeople can be maybe picking up from how the streaming guys are coming and presenting to you and the data they're presenting to you as well?
Definitely needs to be a bit more data-led. A lot of the proposals that I've seen are very talent-led, and it's talent at the heart. And while I understand that radio talent is very important, and that's what connects our consumers, we don't want to just think about the talent. Think about the client and the client experience and the total footprint, and back it up with some data. I think some networks do it really well, and some not so much. Rather than coming up to me, with a proposal that's for the summer period, and these are the talent that's going to be on. Why? Sell it to me more. Like, what's the data? Why should I, partner with you guys across the summer period? I'm not going to partner with you guys just because of the talent. Let's be realistic, right? Our client's not going to buy into that. It has to be followed by, some sort of data-led opportunities and how it fits in, again, the overall footprint and the experience.
So I need to disagree with that as well. Sorry. So
I was going to if you didn't.
Okay. Sorry. So I think what Beck's saying is really important. It's, we need data, we need research, we need more than just radio survey. We can find that, right? And we need more than just Roy Morgan because we've all got access to that as well. So what we need to understand is how are your consumers interacting with your brands that's really unique to your brand, and then how they're interacting with your talent that's really unique to your talent, and then how is that changing? For us, that's the really interesting thing. 12-year-olds still ringing radio stations hoping to get free stuff. Is that how we engage them? Not that we engage with 12-year-olds, but anyway. But, 35-year-olds ringing in, or are they actually kind of passively listening? Like, what is it across all of the different segments that you have? What are the differences between how they're engaging with your brands and how they're engaging with your stations? I think that's kind of the crux of the area for me. We talk a lot about, ideas, and we get a lot of pressure. I know we push that pressure back to you guys. What's the big idea? How can we sell this into our client? But we have huge amounts of pressure to us to come up with new, shiny toys all the time, right?
Media first.
Media first is a constant thing on our briefs, which makes
Disruption.
strategists crazy. But it is true, and that's why we kind of push it back to you, and why for us, talent is the unique thing that each station can deliver us. So how can we uniquely use your talent to help drive our brands?
Okay, I'm going to throw it out to you guys, so stick your hand up if you've got a question. Don't be shy, there's one down the front here. If you just say who you are, where you're from, please.
Hi, I'm Peter Saxon. I'm from Radio Info. And it's interesting to hear you following the Mark Ritson session. And I guess that we all know in this room is if you want to sell something, you've got to sell both the hearts and the minds. And if you don't sell the heart, you can't win people over with facts and data. Just ask a Donald Trump supporter. But so he gently suggested that perhaps radio isn't cool among the advertising fraternity. And perhaps it's not sinking through And I think that, he looked at the data and he gently suggested that perhaps the digital realm isn't actually what it says it is. I think he used the word bullshit. So I'd like to know from the panel, did any of that move you? Did any of that change your perception about radio? Is radio suffering from being not cool?
Peter, maybe start with you if you were in that session.
I had a few opinions about what he said. He stoked a fire in your belly. He didn't, I think, represent all of the facts as we interpret them. So I think he was I think some of his messaging around digital overplaying, it can be interpreted as valid. I think the facts that he delivered about TV as, traditional TV, it's still, life and soul. I think that it's dangerous to be presenting it that way because that is not the way it's moving. So it might be a snapshot now, but it's not moving that way. I don't feel like in our agencies we look at radio as a has-been media in any way, shape or form. What I think is that we need to look very differently at how we use radio, and I think his point about it being a complementary medium, we've always looked at it in that way. We would never go 100% radio because people don't just consume one channel, they consume a lot of different ones. So for me, it's about understanding radio's role within the overall mix of what we're trying to do for our particular campaign or client.
Sorry?
Well, I just did a campaign that was 100% radio, and it worked really well for what we're trying to do. So I don't think there's it's not that we think it's uncool at all. I think it's, just as Peter was saying, how do we see the next evolution of radio and where it's going? Because obviously you guys have big plans for that. Tell us about it and show us that, because we're really excited to see that sort of stuff.
And let us help you, because we do have brand budgets that we're trying to drive big things for our clients. And as we said, we're looking at big ideas and media first. So how can we help you kind of start that evolution as well?
I've got another question. One at the back there. Could you say who you are, where you're from, please?
My name's Verity. I'm from AudioNet. Peter, you mentioned that if you're looking at regional television is easier to buy. Could you elaborate on that a bit more, please? Why TV is easier than regional radio?
Yeah, I know I said it, I'm potentially the worst person to ask
Do you want
because
me to?
I have no control over those particular budgets. Do you want to?
Yeah, well, I guess from the markets that we look at, TV covers, so the regional networks cover a bigger space. So, for example, you buy northern New South Wales, it covers Sydney upwards, or southern New South Wales, and it covers all of that space, rather than picking Wollongong and Newcastle and going to the individual markets. So that's what makes it, I guess, easier for us, because it's less things that we need to track, buy, trade, negotiate, implement, track.
I think buying regional radio is way easier than buying regional TV, but planning regional TV, like you said, is way easier than planning regional radio.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, we're going to have to draw a line under it there because we fortunately run out of time. But can you please just join me in thanking the panel?